G'day and welcome back to another DB Legends video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Zenkai for Red Majin Vegeta. A unit that has a pretty good Zenkai, but quite frankly, if I'm being honest, I don't have the team to really accommodate him. I don't have the units to make him work, but I thought it'd still be interesting to take a look at him regardless. So his special ability will increase 30% of self-destruct damage inflicted for 60 timer accounts, which is pretty good considering his big gimmick is his huge AoE self-destruct attack. His superior tenacity also basically increases damage inflicted whilst also letting him draw a card, reducing the cooldown towards his main ability and also obviously giving him a little bit more kind of control by randomly destroying one card. In terms of the final explosion, this is a huge self-destruct attack that will deal AoE damage and deals a fixed amount of damage to the enemy, which can only really be increased with the effects of his own skills and nothing else really. In terms of Vegeta himself, obviously his main ability restores ki, restores health, and allows him to draw the final explosion. It's got a relatively long cooldown, so that's why these special cards help. His Z ability is Saiyans and self-destruct damage, which isn't the most spectacular, and obviously he covers red units as well with his Zenkai ability. Now in terms of Cold and Cruel Saiyan, this has been changed. He now has a decent amount of damage reduction recovery in the first couple minutes of the fight, timer counts of the fight, which is pretty good. He also gains a bunch of buffs if he's facing a Goku unit, and he will also gain some buffs when the attack combo from the enemy is over, and he will also gain some buffs if he's the last unit standing, which is pretty good. Basically, he gains a whole bunch of damage inflicted buffs. He gains quite a bit of really good abilities if he's the last unit, his last dice. In terms of his gear, I've gone for mainly strike gear, key recovery gear, and anything to give him a bit of defense overall, because his main ability, which I think is his main kind of gimmick, can't really be affected by special move cards. I just went for strike mainly, and a little bit of health alongside also just giving him some raw defense. But nothing too crazy here. I think the main focus is, generally speaking, strike damage, health, and defenses as obviously part of his cards. Now, I did struggle to find a couple matches. Sometimes you have those problems. So you'll see some cuts because the wait times were quite long. Overall, I didn't really have the team to service this guy quite properly or as well as I'd like. So that's the only real shame. I will admit the team just didn't give him the capabilities he needed. But it is cool. It was nice to point out a couple really nice things about him as a unit. And one of those things is obviously with his main ability, there is a bit of a timer delay for it. Now, normal attacks will not throw it off, but rising rushes and other ultimate abilities can and will, throw you off. So it's important to understand that when you're using his main ability, that you're going to need some kind of setup, whether that's to delay the enemy or to destroy their cards. You're going to need to buy yourself an extra 2 time accounts to allow the ability to go off. It's not just something you can combo into. So it's very important that you basically keep that in mind when trying to utilize his ability. And you're going to see me fail to utilize his ability because of being not knowledgeable of that fact. And then you're going to see me succeed in using his ability, obviously because of the fact that the enemy could not break it. So if you're using Vegeta, understand that yes, there is a gimmick to him, and that gimmick is obviously his final explosion. And with that final explosion, there is always the risk that you will miss the ability. And if you miss the ability, he's a decent unit still, but he's not great. His big gimmick is the huge AoE self-destruct damage that can potentially just completely eliminate the opposition team. Now, one thing I will admit, it's not a great meta for Vegeta to kind of jump into. There's not a lot of big priority yellow units, at least none that I can think of. You've got the Vegeta and Trunks yellow unit, and you've maybe got Ultra Vegito. But generally speaking, it's not a yellow heavy meta, whereas there are some pretty strong blue options that could give you some issues. So I don't think it's the strongest meta for Vegeta. But again, my team is just not realistically good enough to make things work. So here we are going to see, by the way, the cancellation of the ability, which is important. I think, personally speaking, Vegeta's a lot of fun. It's always cool to kind of have these gimmicky units whereby if you get off their ability, or if you do this, that you can see some really interesting results. Very similar to the blue Goku and Vegeta that seems to be circulating right now. When you get their abilities to go off, they look really, really gnarly, but then when you don't, they don't look so gnarly. So it's always a little bit of a catch. Yeah, like a catch-22 situation. But yeah, basically, I think for me, Vegeta's in a good space. His team's got a lot of buffs recently. He doesn't really have a double Zenkai boost on that team. Not yet. We don't know what Ultra Majin Buu, or sorry, Ultra Kid Buu will be. So there is potential for him to have a slot there, depending on what his boost is. But yeah, I think overall Vegeta's just a fun, cool, gimmicky unit to use. The times you get him right, he's a hell of a lot of fun. And the times you get him wrong, he's not so fun. But for me, generally speaking, I found him to be a unit that's a decent chunk of fun. I found him to be entertaining. I found him to be interesting to use. Like I said, I didn't have the team for him, unfortunately. By the way, you're going to see here the cancellation of the main ability. So even though you can see we're comboing, by the way, decent strike damage from Vegeta. And we combo in again, and we activate the ability immediately. You can see by activating his Rising Rush, he is able to cancel our ability. Obviously, you want to try and make sure there is no Rising Rush, but it's just to point out that you can have it cancelled, which isn't the greatest. It feels really bad to have your massive AoE self-destruct cancelled. It's really bumming, and doesn't really make the game a lot of fun. But that's kind of the risk you take. Personally speaking, I think Vegeta is an interesting unit because of it. I don't see myself using him tremendously much, but I don't have a strong Majin Buu Saga team. I also am not big on Vegeta clan teams, or just running Vegeta on a pure Saiyans team. That's me because I don't have the necessary components to make it run. But for someone who can make it run, Vegeta could be a hell of an exciting option. An AoE attack that does this much damage is always bound to be something impressive. So you'll see now in a fight that we get against an admittedly terrible team, which is controlled by a bot. So full disclaimer. But you will see that the AoE will go off, and when the AoE goes off, it's obviously far more impressive. But you can see that normal attacks will not break it, and that's kind of what I want to show. I don't really care too much about getting it off against a good team, because it is a difficult maneuver to do. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's an easy thing to get off. You can pair it nicely. If you can get something like a solar flare, if you can get something that gives you or buys you some extra combo time, you're going to have a better time. Quite frankly, you will have a better time. You will hit the ability. You are going to then run things way better, and then you're going to do big damage. Like, you will do big damage. It's almost unavoidable. Once it goes off, it's very similar to blue Goku and blue Vegeta, where it's just a huge amount of AoE damage, and it becomes very difficult for them to kind of come back on. Obviously, the thing is it is a KO move. Thank you very much. And the KO move, the big thing with KO moves, you also losing a unit. So either you use it right in the beginning to obviously just deal huge AoE damage, or you just don't use it. Like, losing a unit mid-fight is just not really worth it unless you manage to get the really good sacrifice. It's just not really in the zone where it's needed. You're just going to end up losing more than you gain. more than likely, because you can't also knock out units on the rotation. So if they have revive skills, cause you problems. That's from me. Bye.